97.7%. That's how a referendum went on a Pacific island most people couldn't place on a map. Not 52 to 48, not a narrow mandate to be argued over for a decade. 97.7% of voters on Bougainville chose independence over remaining part of Papua New Guinea, on a turnout that would embarrass most Western democracies. It is one of the most emphatic results ever recorded in a vote of this kind. That was in 2019. Bougainville is still not a country, and the reason why is a lesson in the difference between what people want and what the machinery of statehood requires. Start with the place, because the geography explains most of the grievance. Bougainville sits at the eastern edge of Papua New Guinea, but geologically and culturally it belongs to the Solomon Islands chain next door. Its people are darker skinned than most Papua New Guineans, a difference they have been acutely aware of for a very long time. The border that put it inside PNG was drawn by colonial administrators, dividing the Pacific between empires, with no interest in who lived where. Around 300,000 people live there now. And under the ground sat one of the largest copper deposits on Earth. The Panguna mine opened in the early 1970s, and for a while it was extraordinary, at points supplying a substantial share of Papua New Guinea's entire export earnings and a large slice of government revenue. When PNG became independent in 1975, Panguna was effectively the financial foundation the new nation was built on. The country was funded by a hole in the ground on an island whose people did not particularly consider themselves part of it. The islanders saw the arithmetic differently. The mine consumed their land. Tailings and waste were poured into the river system, and the environmental destruction of the valley was severe and visible. Meanwhile, the revenue went out, to the national government, to the mining company, to shareholders, and the share that stayed with the landowners who lived beside it was by any reading small. It's the oldest resource grievance there is. The wealth leaves, the damage stays. In 1988, it broke. Landowners began sabotaging the mine, then took up arms, and what began as a dispute over compensation became a full independence war. The mine shut down and has never reopened. PNG sent in the defense force and then did something that made the conflict far worse. It imposed a blockade on the island. That blockade is the part that gets left out of the summary. For years, Bougainville was cut off. No fuel, no medicine, no imports. People made do with what the island produced, treating wounds with traditional medicine and running vehicles on coconut oil. Most estimates put the death toll somewhere between 15 and 20,000, and a large share of those deaths were not combat, but the consequences of a health system with nothing in it. It became the deadliest conflict in the Pacific since the Second World War. The war ended around 1998, and the peace agreement that followed was unusually thoughtful. Rather than settling the independence question immediately, it deferred it. Autonomy first, weapons disposal, an elected regional government, and a guaranteed referendum to be held later. It bought 2 decades of calm by promising a vote, which duly arrived in 2019 and produced 97.7%. The disarmament that made it work deserves a mention because it's the part peace processes usually fail at. Weapons were collected and sealed in containers under supervision with an unarmed international monitoring presence rather than a peacekeeping force. Australia and New Zealand, among others, deliberately without guns, on the theory that armed outsiders would become a target and another faction. It was slow and imperfect, and some weapons stayed out. It also largely held, which is more than can be said for a great many better-resourced interventions. Here's the catch, and it was written into the agreement from the start. The referendum is not binding. The result goes to the National Parliament of Papua New Guinea, which must ratify it. Bougainville's overwhelming vote is, legally speaking, an input to a decision made by the very body it's asking to be released from, which explains the delay. PNG has been in no hurry. From its side, the objections are serious rather than merely obstinate. Papua New Guinea has enormous linguistic and regional diversity, hundreds of languages and many provinces with their own strong local identity. And letting one region depart on a referendum sets a precedent that could unravel a state already stretched thin. There's the revenue question, and the reopening of Panguna is a live prospect worth a great deal. And there's the ordinary political reality that no government enjoys presiding over the loss of territory, so the two sides negotiated a timetable instead. Self-government is scheduled for the 1st of September 2027, with a declared target of full independence on the 1st of September 2030. It's the kind of arrangement that looks like progress and functions as a delay. Real dates, real milestones, and still no ratification vote in the parliament that has to hold one. The economics of what comes next are genuinely difficult. A new nation of 300,000 people needs revenue, and the obvious source is the mine that started the war. Reopening Panguna could fund a state. It could also reopen the exact wound the whole conflict was about, on land where the people who fought over it still live. Bougainville's leadership has to somehow use the asset without repeating the history, and there is no comfortable version of that conversation. It's also worth being clear about what independence actually involves, because the flag is the easy part. A state needs a currency or a decision to use somebody else's. It needs passports other countries will accept, which means recognition, which means diplomacy. It has no foreign service to conduct. It needs courts, a treasury, a customs service, a health system, a police force, and the ability to collect enough tax to pay for all of it from 300,000 people. The 2027 self-government milestone is really about building that apparatus, and the 2030 date assumes it works. The recent precedents are sobering on exactly this point. Timor-Leste, also in the neighbourhood, became independent in 2002 after its own long and violent struggle, and spent the following years dealing with unrest and heavy dependence on a single resource. South Sudan achieved independence in 2011 by referendum with a comparably overwhelming result and descended into civil war within 2 years. Both had the vote, both had the sympathy. What neither had was a functioning state ready on the day, and the gap between those two things is where new countries tend to come apart. Then there's the outside interest, which is the part that has changed most since 2019. The Pacific is now a theatre of strategic competition in a way it hasn't been since the 1940s. China has been steadily expanding its diplomatic and economic presence across the region. Australia and the United States have been responding with attention and money. A brand new state with a serious mineral deposit and no established alignment is not going to be short of friends offering assistance. That raises Bougainville's leverage and its risk in the same motion, because being courted is not the same as being supported. There's a quieter obstacle too, which is that recognition is a club decision. A new state needs other states to treat it as one, and most of them have their own restive province, contested island or independence movement they'd rather not encourage. That's why the international system leans so heavily on the principle that borders change by agreement rather than by declaration. Not out of affection for existing borders, but because every member has something to lose if the rule weakens. Bougainville's path runs through PNG's parliament precisely because everybody else prefers it that way. What makes this worth watching isn't the drama though, it's that we are witnessing, in slow motion and largely unreported, the thing that almost never happens, a new country being made. The map is remarkably stable. Borders drawn in colonial offices a century ago have proved astonishingly durable, and the international system is deeply reluctant to endorse secession because every existing state has a region it worries about. Bougainville has done everything the rulebook asks: fought a war, made peace, disarmed, governed itself, held a clean referendum, won it overwhelmingly, and waited. And it is still waiting because the final step belongs to somebody else, which leaves a question worth carrying. If a near-unanimous vote isn't enough to make a country, what exactly is, and who decided that?